This is Rebel Mom Boss, the podcast for scrappy, rebellious moms who are making things happen while raising their babies. My name is Robyn Flynn, a scrappy, rebellious mom myself, and the founder and managing director of Robyn Flynn Media. I'm also a mom to a beautiful toddler named Peyton. We do things a little bit differently here, so buckle up and welcome to the rebellion. Welcome to Rebel Mom Boss. I'm your host, Robyn Flynn. So excited to have you along for the ride on this new podcast. This podcast is for anyone who's a mom, who's a business owner, who wants to start their own business, who's an entrepreneur and a mom at the same time. Doesn't matter. This is the space for you. On this podcast, we're going to be speaking with women who are leaders in the business world, women who are leaders in their home, and women who are just leaders overall. This podcast is for anybody who wants to grow, who wants to learn, who wants to find a community of like-minded women, who wants to feel seen, who wants to feel heard, and maybe for those of you who are a little bit scrappy and like to do things a little bit differently. I'll start by introducing myself and telling you a little bit more about me and my journey. My name's Robyn Flynn, as I mentioned, and I started my business, Robyn Flynn Media, in February of 2023. Prior to starting my business, I had been working in broadcast radio for over 10 years. I started out as an intern at a sports radio station, which was extremely male-dominated, and I had to learn how to be really, really good, really, really fast. And throughout my internship, I was just always around, always agreeing to do whatever needed to be done and willing to constantly be learning and being better. From that internship, I managed to get a job at that sports radio station, and I managed to grow that into a technical producer job at a news radio station. Then I became a content producer and eventually a talk show host. I absolutely loved working at broadcast radio, and I always say that it taught me to be really good at a lot of things and to know at least a little bit about a lot of things, which was fantastic because when you know a little bit about a lot of things, it enables you to branch out and know what you're actually really good at. It also enabled me to zero in on some organizational skills as well as leadership skills, because when you're the one in charge during a breaking news situation and people are counting on you for their information, for their advice, like, a huge snowstorm, a flood situation, a wildfire, or even a global pandemic, you have to be able to keep your cool and be able to discern what is a real source, what is fake news, and be able to relay that information in a palatable way to people who are looking to consume that information that they are then going to relay to their own friends and family members and possibly make their choices for how they and their family move forward with their lives. From there, I went on to have a baby. Which is an interesting story because my husband and I struggled with infertility for over 3 years before we got pregnant. We had to do a variety of fertility treatments, including IVF, and it was our second frozen embryo transfer that gave us our beautiful daughter who turns 3 this March. Now, if you had asked me before I had my daughter whether or not I would quit my job, I would have 100% unequivocally said absolutely not. I absolutely loved working in radio. I loved what I did. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved the people who listened to the radio station. This was the job for me. This was my dream job since I was a little girl. I knew I wanted to work in radio. But everything changed when my daughter came, especially because of the fight that we had to have my daughter. The fact that it took so long to get pregnant, all of the heartache, the miscarriages, the losses, the pain. IVF is such a painful procedure. And if you have ever been through it, my heart goes out to you, having to, stab yourself with needles every day and give yourself injections and the hormones and the procedures. It's miserable, but it's worth it when you're fighting towards an end goal. And I do think there's a lesson to be learned there that you can take into your entrepreneurial journey. I knew that I didn't want to go back to work full time, that I wasn't ready to leave my baby. And I'm fortunate enough to be in Canada where we do get a year of paid parental leave. But even after a year, I didn't feel ready to go back to work full time. And with the hours that I had at my job, I was working 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which meant dropping her off at daycare in the morning, getting to work, commuting home and finding a daycare that was open after 6 o'clock, getting home, making dinner, getting her to bed. I wouldn't have spent any time with her. And I know for a lot of moms, you don't really have an option. That is the choice. But finishing at 6 p.m., trying to find a daycare that was open late, it just wasn't feasible for us or our family, and it wasn't what I wanted. So I decided to start my own business. I did try a few different things that didn't quite work out. For a while, I wanted to be a fertility doula. I even enrolled in Doula Canada's training program. It's a phenomenal course. But I wanted to work with other women who were experiencing infertility and undergoing IVF. But after a while, I realized that a lot of these women are already spending a ton of money on procedures, and I didn't feel comfortable taking their money, basically. So I dropped that idea. I also, for a while, had a hot cocoa bomb business, but I realized that there's not a huge market for it outside of Christmas, basically. So I was really, really busy for the months of November and December, and that business would just drop off a cliff. So that didn't pan out long term. And it was a lot of work. My kitchen always smelled like chocolate, which sounds great in theory, but not so great in practice. Plus, having to work around having a baby and trying to make things in your kitchen was not super easy. Ultimately, what I settled on was starting my own marketing agency. And the reason I decided to do this was because I thought that I had a lot of transferable skills from my days in radio that I thought would transfer into marketing. Because ultimately, marketing is all about good storytelling. The purpose is to market your story as a brand, as a business, to people who will feel invested in your story and your product and want to buy it from you. And radio is all about good storytelling. It's about keeping people hooked, keeping them interested, so that when they pull into their driveways after a long day at work and they're on their way home, they've had a long commute, but there's a really, really great story, a really great interview on the air, and they stay in their car for just a few minutes longer to hear the end of that story. That is ultimately the goal with marketing. I had a lot of experience with social media during the pandemic. Like everybody, I downloaded TikTok and it went viral a couple times within the infertility community. So I had a pretty good sense of what works on social media, and I became really good at editing short form video content. So I said, you know what? Why not? I am going to create a marketing agency, and I am going to offer podcast production, full stack from pre-production to post-production. And I'm going to offer social media marketing for your podcast so that you can promote your podcast and actually get people to listen to it. That kind of expanded into social media as a whole, podcast audits, podcast editing, content creation, UGC, influencer marketing. I've expanded into paid ads, SEO. I have even built websites, which is not my forte at all. I do not know Python. I do not know how to code. So, very, very basic stuff. But I did make my own website, but, shout out to Squarespace, not a sponsor of this show, but without them, I would not have my website at robynflynn.com. They make it really easy, and there's a lot of great tools. So the purpose of this podcast is for me to highlight what some of those tools are so that you can start your own business. Because I do think that there's this misconception that business ownership is not for everybody. That's what I thought. I thought that I didn't have the necessary capital or funding to be able to start my own business. I thought you needed thousands of dollars saved up to start your business. I thought you needed investors. I thought you needed to be a graduate from a business school and have degrees and masters. You needed to be a rich, smart, highly educated individual. And that wasn't me. I'm a university dropout. I was originally studying to be a teacher because, I changed my mind a little bit. I'm 2 years into a education degree from McGill University in Montreal, but I dropped out because I decided to work in radio, and that was where the opportunity was at the time. You don't need to have a university degree to start your business. All you really need is a great idea and a plan. And one skill that I had was planning and being organized. So I was able to start small, podcast editing, podcast production, and add on other services, learn different skills. You don't have to pay for fancy master classes or sign up for expensive classes. There are so many free tutorials, whether on YouTube, HubSpot, LinkedIn Learning. There are so many options for you to learn new skills that you can then use in your business. There are frequently free webinars, workshops, things that you can attend online. Even just expanding your network on LinkedIn and learning from other creators on LinkedIn who are posting about being an entrepreneur, about their business. That's a great way to learn as well. Always be expanding your network, always be learning. Those are the two main lessons that I took away in early entrepreneurship. I'm not saying it's easy, and I am not saying that entrepreneurship is for everybody. If you're somebody that needs a consistent, steady paycheck every 2 weeks, entrepreneurship is probably not for you. But if you're comfortable with that uncertainty, if that drives you and fuels you to push harder, which it did for me, because at the end of the day, if I didn't succeed, I couldn't put food on my table. I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage or my half of the mortgage. I do have a husband, and he does contribute as a father and financially. But I had that fuel, that drive pushing me to succeed because failure was not an option. The advantage of being a mom entrepreneur is you get to call the shots. I think too often in business, we feel nervous to take days off when our kids are sick, or to take time off for appointments, or even just to take time off because our kids are having a hard time and they need our attention. And one advantage that I have as my own boss is that I get to create my schedule. I decide when I do or don't take meetings, and I get to work around my daughter. Now, does that mean that I work in the evening sometimes when she goes to sleep? Yes. Does that mean that I'm on my phone when I'm spending time with her because I'm answering client emails or text messages? Yes. That's just the nature of the beast. For me, work-life balance isn't about separating work and life. For me, it's about making space for both in my life. Making space for work and for my life, and for my daughter, and for my friends and family. Having everything sort of meld into one, that is what has worked for me. I'm really excited to have you along for the ride. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. These are going to be really short, bite-sized podcasts that you can consume really easily and really quickly. Because let's face it, if you're a mom, ain't nobody got time for that. We don't have a ton of time to sit around and listen to an hour-long podcast. We need to get in, get out, get the information, absorb that information, and move on with our lives and our day. If there's anything that you want to hear, that you want to learn more about, please comment, leave a review, follow me on all social medias at Robyn Lisa Flynn. I'm really looking forward to this Rebel Mom Boss journey. Welcome to the podcast, and I'm so excited to keep this thing going. If you liked what you heard today, make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate Rebel Mom Boss. You can also follow the host of Rebel Mom Boss, Robyn Flynn. Hey, that's me, on all social medias at Robyn Lisa Flynn. You can also check out my website at robynflynn.com. Until next time.